All right, welcome back to economics. This is the basics part two, which obviously follows part one that you should have watched earlier this week. And if not, go back and watch it first and then watch this part. Okay, so let's see where we go from here. So remember, what is the purpose of dealing with economics? It is, of course, dealing with scarcity, which is also known as the economic dilemma, which can also be described as the unlimited wants versus limited resources. So basically, there are three ways to say the same thing. What's the point of economics? What are we studying? What are we trying to figure out? The answer is all of these three. So make sure you can use them interchangeably. Make sure you can explain them, but they all mean the same thing, that we do not have enough resources to meet all of our unlimited wants. Okay? So I personally like the last choice here because I think it's the most direct and clear, while the other two I think are a little vague. Of course, scarcity a little generic, but that's okay. You can figure it out. All right, so where do we go next? Well, the next thing is let's have the official definition of economics, okay? And here you go. And obviously you can see by the definition there are two key parts. The first part is how. Okay, we all know we have the problem. The question is now is how do we plan on dealing with it? Okay, and so that's what we need to do. We need to deal with the problem. Okay, in order to do that, we need to think about who's going to get what, and that means allocation. Okay, in economics, we need to figure out what individuals, what companies, what societies, what are they going to receive in terms of limited resources or the finished products that we make out of those limited resources. And really allocate's a fancy way of saying how do you divide up, right? How do you distribute these limited resources, given the fact that, again, we have limited wants, as you see ahead of you. So that's really the definition of economics officially, okay? There's an important flow chart that I like to use in class. I think it does a good job of basically kind of giving you an organizational system, a visual of how the key concepts are sort of connected to each other. So I'm going to start using it now, and I'll add to it as we go on. I suggest you create this chart somewhere, maybe on a separate sheet of paper in your notes, and you fill in as we go. So, of course, it starts with the economic dilemma because that's what economics is all about. That's its starting point. Because we have the economic dilemma, we must, of course, do what? Make choices. Okay. And when we make a choice, we must accept opportunity costs. If none of this is making too much sense, you might want to stop and go back and look at the first video under the basics. Hopefully this is, yeah, you're nodding your head going, yep, this makes sense. I remember all this. Good. Moving on. In order to deal with the economic dilemma, there are three questions, as you can see in front of you, that need to be addressed. Now, this is a good moment to stop and talk about certain types of questions. Okay, you can see them here. What will be produced, how will it be produced, and for whom will it be produced? In economics, there are really two types of questions that we look at. They're called normative and positive. Okay, positive statements are factual statements. Okay, such as you must pass economics to graduate from Heritage High School. That is a true statement. You can document that. You can go look it up in the handbook. You can go talk to your counselor. Okay, they can point to the words written down. It's a factual statement. Okay, in economics, I've said the unemployment is 6.3%. Okay, you could confirm that. You could go look it up and see. Yep, Department of Labor this month said unemployment rate is in fact 6.3%. Okay, there's no debate. Other statements we call normative, meaning that they're debatable, that there's judgment involved. Okay, there's room for discussion. Okay, so going back to my example, economics is the most important course you'll take in social studies. Obviously, I have a personal view on the answer to that question, but you could debate that there may be other classes that are more important, specifically to you or to individuals altogether. Going back to my economics example, saying unemployment is 6.3%. Saying unemployment is too high at 6.3%. Well, we could debate that, saying that still represents millions of people who want work that don't have it. Or you could say, well, looking at the last 5 or 6 years, it's been coming down, so it's obviously better than it has been. But again, there's judgment, there's wiggle room. It's a gray area. Okay. Obviously, if you haven't figured it out already, the kind of questions that we're going to focus on are, in fact, the normative statement. Okay? These three questions are normative. There is not one right answer to any of them. Okay? Individuals can answer them in different ways, and more importantly, societies answer them in different ways. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these questions and kind of just clarify what they are, and then I'm going to give you the sort of how the United States as a nation answers these three questions. But again, it is not necessarily that doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just the way we've decided to answer the questions. So the first question is pretty self-explanatory. What we produced? Basically asking, okay, how are we going to use the limited resources and produce what goods and what services? What are we going to make? And simply put, in our society, the way we decide what we produce is simply what consumers want. If people want it, somebody out there is probably going to try to produce it. So look at the clothes you're wearing, the shoes on your feet, the things in your room, or if you're in a Starbucks, look at the things on the wall. All those things are produced because somebody went out and realized people are willing to pay for this, so I'm going to produce it. Okay? And if you ever had the experience at the mall, you're walking around and you look at a store and you see some outfit and you think, oh my gosh, who do they think is going to buy it? That is bad news, because that means they didn't really think too well about who would buy it. And if you're not going to buy it, that means that that product will not be bought, and eventually, obviously, it will not be produced. Okay, but for the most part in our society, anything that people want that's legal will be produced. Okay, so if you want hot pink pants with colored lights on them, somebody's going to make it, and you can buy it and look awfully snazzy walking around the halls of Heritage. Okay. So that's the first question. The second question, how will we produce? That's simply saying, how will we use our resources to produce this product? Okay, in what manner will we take the raw materials, okay, the limited resources, and convert them or transform them into the finished product? Okay, different countries can answer this in different ways. In the United States, the simple answer is whatever is most efficient. Okay, the best example I can give you is Walmart. Okay, obviously their tagline is everyday low prices. Okay, they're famous for going to their suppliers and saying you need to make this cheaper. You need to find more efficiency in how you produce this product for us. Therefore, we can lower the price for our consumers. And if you think that's not a big deal, there are studies showing that on average, an American family can save over $2,000 by shopping at Walmart over a year. And over 100 million people go to Walmart every week, so it works for a lot of people. But really the simple answer is efficiency. And that's why you can see around the country. We produce things in the country here that we're really efficient. Now what we're really good at is coming up with the ideas, the new inventions or innovations. And let's be clear here real quick. Innovation is taking something that exists and making it better. Look at this phone in your pocket. Okay, if it's an iPhone or even Samsung, those were not the very first cell phones created. Go ask your parents. The first cell phones were about as big as your shoe, okay, as long as your shoe is size 8 or bigger, weighed about 5 pounds, and the battery lasted for about an hour, okay, and it cost $3,000, okay. A company like Apple comes along and realizes, you know what, we can make that better. We can improve upon it. And basically now your phone is a computer. There's more computing power in a cell phone these days than all the computers were used to take a man to the moon. So obviously cell phones have come a long way since they were first invented. Okay. Now, if you come with a brand new invention, obviously that's an invention, but those are rare. Most entrepreneurs, what they do is they take something that's out there and they make it better. Okay. All right. So for the last question, for whom will it be produced? Simply saying, who gets it? After we decide what to make and how to make it, the question is who in the society should get the product. Okay. And the answer in the United States simply is usually whoever has the money. Okay, you've all seen the picture of the beautiful car in my room. Okay, as you know, that's something I would love to have. The only thing in my way is the $80,000 price tag. Okay, that's how we decide. For most goods and services that are produced, you got to have the dineros. You got to have the Benjamins. You got to be able to pay for it. Now, that's not true of everything. If you think about it, there are some resources that we divide up in many different ways. One thing I can tell you about, every several days we give away potentially millions of dollars randomly. And some of you could potentially get some of that money. And if you haven't figured it out, it's the lottery. If you're over 18, you can go buy a lottery ticket. And if you pick the right random numbers, and again, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice or eaten by a great white, you'd be worth millions of dollars. But again, that's an example of how we distribute some resources not based on money. Another one that you could probably relate to is money for college. Okay, doesn't matter how much money you have. Well, actually, the less money you have is better because then you can be potentially offered more grants and loans. Okay. Also, think about concert tickets. If you want a concert ticket, you got to get online and be first in line. Doesn't matter if you're a millionaire. If you don't get online or you don't wait in line, literally, you won't get the concert tickets. So all of you that are going to the Justin Bieber concert, if there is one out there somewhere, you got to get up early and get online. Okay. Of course, that involves choices and opportunity costs in its own, but that's another story. Okay. So real quick, United States, what is produced? What consumers want. How we produce it? Efficiency. For whom? Whoever can afford the product for the most part. But again, some of the resources are divided up in a different manner. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. These are just 3 basic questions, but you do need to be able to use them and identify them when you see them. Again, if you have any questions about this, ask me in class. Moving on. Next up are the factors of production. In order to produce a product, which we just was the first question, we need to be able to create it, and we need what's called the factors of production. And there are 4 of them, and you need to know them. And they're pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but we do need to go over them. So here we go. Okay, so there you go. Yes, the economic resources need to produce goods and services. I think I said that, but I should have brought this slide up first. Here we go. So, factors of production. First one is land. Okay, as you can see from the definition, it's literally the physical location of a store. Here's my coffee example, Starbucks, woohoo! Or where the raw materials are located. So if you're using, oil, it's wherever you're pumping it out of the ground. Okay. If it's wood, it's wherever you get the trees from, that kind of thing. But it's a physical location of the factory or the raw materials. Okay, or a store. Labor is just obviously the people who are working. And one thing I'd like to make it very clear is that labor includes skills. Okay, and I've kind of said this before to you, but the reason you're going to get a job one day is the skills that you have. Your ability to read and write, think critically, analyze, debate, solve problems. If you ask your parents or most adults, they spend their day solving problems, and that's what you need to be able to do, and that's the skills we're trying to help you develop here at school. But when we define labor, it's both a person, the physical person, and the skills that they have. So that's number 2. This next one is called capital, and this is the one that confuses a lot of kids. Unfortunately, a lot of times when you hear capital in economic or financial terms, they mean money. We don't. When we talk about capital right now, we're referring, as you can see from the picture, tools. The tools that you use to produce the product. So right now, if you are sitting watching this video, you are using a computer or a phone, that would be a tool. In the chair you're sitting, the lights you're using, the paper, the pen you're using, hopefully take notes because you're supposed to. All those things, okay? So that's capital, the tools we use to produce the product. So the Tesla, again, it's the factory, it's the robots, it's all the tools that the workers are using. That would all be considered capital to produce the final product, okay? The last but not least is entrepreneur, which most of you are familiar with, heard this term, but basically they're the risk takers. They're the people who come up with the idea. They see something that's out there and they make it better. Remember, that's called innovation. Okay, or they come up with something brand spanking new. Well, obviously, Edison is a famous example of that. But again, most entrepreneurs today would be called entrepreneurs. Okay, most famous one today is a guy named Elon Musk. If you don't know who he is, Google him. Okay, but he's an up and coming. He's the actual. People say he's the real life Tony Stark. Though I don't think he's a superhero. Anyway, so there you go. These are some of the basic concepts we're talking about. There are more in this PowerPoint, but I'm going to run out of room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this right now, and I'm going to start a new one for the next part. Let's just watch up to this point right now, and we'll watch the next part later. Okay. Again, take some good notes. Feel free to clarify any questions you have, and we will be going over in class. I hope you had good time this weekend. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.